and welcome to this episode of HCA Talks Health. I'm Zena le Roux, and today I'm talking to Keith Wilson. So welcome, Keith. It's such an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's nice to be invited.
Wonderful. So, Keith, you've got a really interesting story to tell, and it all started when your Parkinson's disease has been confirmed in March 2020. So it's a little bit over 2 years ago. So please tell us more about this journey. What happened after you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease?
Right. Well, I've been showing symptoms, long before I was diagnosed, and I got the confirmation from the brain scan in March 2020. And your initial reaction is a bit of a relief that it's nothing more serious, that's not like a brain tumor or anything sort of completely life-ending, life-threatening. But then you go into a bit of a depression in terms of, your life's never going to be the same in terms of your activities and the things that you enjoy doing. And it coincided with lockdown as well. So it was, virtually the same week the pandemic hit the UK quite badly. And so all activities were restricted. And so, I've always led a very active life, rock climbing, mountaineering, cycling, running. And I thought it was all going to end. And also my voice deteriorated very quickly, very rapidly. And because I wasn't talking to anyone, it wasn't making any friends, so my voice just disappeared, basically, turned into a sort of mumble, and a very slurred mumble. And you actually go through, I went through a phase of actually becoming quite, not antisocial, but I didn't really want to go out and meet anyone, even when restrictions were eased. And then gradually, after about a full year actually of thinking that things were never going to be the same again, I decided to accept the offer of speech therapy. And the speech therapy, it's not perfect, but it restored my voice. It was very, very tiring, very hard work. I used to feel absolutely exhausted after an hour of trying to use my voice. I got my voice back, and then I thought, well, if I can get my voice back, I can maybe get some exercise back. I started to initially to cycle with my wife on a tandem, and then from there she progressed to doing a bit of running. And from there, I discovered that the running I would get what's called motion freeze, which is all the lower half of your body. So I was running and my legs were turning into jelly, and I felt absolutely exhausted. And I thought, well, that's how I felt when I was doing the speech therapy. So that it's kind of mind over matter, and you've got to just keep practicing and trying. And what I discovered is if I started singing, it would activate something in my brain that would actually stop my legs from freezing up and turning to jelly.
Oh, wow.
So I then went from so once I'd conquered that, I discovered that through various sort of online conferences about how important the dopamine is in terms of Parkinson's, because it's a lack of dopamine that's causing you problems. And I'm sorry if I'm telling you stuff you already know, but basically, so there's an enzyme eats away the dopamine in your brain, and the dopamine is essential for converting the connection between what's going on in your brain and your muscles. So your brain can work fine and your muscles can work fine, but they just don't work together. So you're more likely to fall over, you're more likely to do involuntary movements and so on. And so what I discovered was if I can keep, I've got to keep both things very fit anyway. So I've got to do brain exercise and physical exercises. But then I also need to generate the chemicals in my brain so they actually work more smoothly together. And that's what singing did. And so from there, I then joined a choir and started doing karaoke. And really kind of rediscovered all the activities. So I do a lot of cycling, a lot of long distance walking and running, and really kind of so going on from being a sort of born again talker to being a born again runner.
Yeah.
So that's the journey.
That's so fascinating, and it's such an inspiring story. So, what you realize, and it all started with the speech therapy, was that, when the whole issue around Parkinson's disease is the lack of dopamine, right?
Mm.
So when the balance is disrupted, that is what results in the tremors and the rigidity and all of that, right? And you
That's
realize
right,
that
yes.
if you are releasing more dopamine through various activities, especially the exercise and so forth, then you can actually manage the disease to a certain degree. Is that right?
That's right, yes. Dopamine and the other chemical, the important chemical is adrenaline, because adrenaline is chemically very similar to dopamine.
Yes.
So anything which can give you an adrenaline boost actually improves everything.
Uh-huh.
So I went to I took two 14-year-old godsons to America with my wife, and we went on lots of roller coasters, and I felt great for a week. So
Yeah.
now I've got a virtual reality headset, and I go on a roller coaster 2 or 3 times a week on a virtual roller coaster, and it works. It gives me energy.
I can imagine. That's fascinating. So, since then, you've really been a bit of an adrenaline junkie, right? So, you've participated in quite extreme physical challenges, if I understand it correctly. So, maybe you can tell us more about some of the challenges that you signed up for.
Yeah. Right. So I mean, in terms of adrenaline, being an adrenaline junkie, I mean, I've never been an extreme one. I've done done a parapont. I've climbed a lot of mountains, and got a lot of thrills from rock climbing and alpinism. But what I discovered was that by setting myself challenges,
Mm.
I could target these things, and so you get adrenaline looking forward to them. You get adrenaline when you're doing them. You get adrenaline when you look back on them.
Mm.
So last year I did five last year, five big ones. 100K in the Lake District, 100K Ultra Challenge. I did Tour of Mont Blanc. Did the Montane 50 miles in a day. Can't remember what the other two were. Land's End to John O'Groats on virtual reality,
Amazing.
and a thing for the Police Federation called Light the Lakes. And then this year I've done another ultra challenge. I did 100 kilometers in the Peak District 2 weeks
Wow.
ago, and then we did the Hebridean Cycleway. We did 320-mile cycle in May.
That's amazing, Keith. And if I may ask, how old are you now?
72.
72. That's fascinating. To still be able to embark on such a, it's quite a strict and dedicated regime of strenuous exercise, right?
Well, it's not coming. I mean, I didn't do very many miles in February because I was in South Africa. But my big ambition was to climb Table Mountain. We went up
Yeah,
Skeleton Gorge and onto the top of Table Mountain. That was really good. That
it's
was the highlight of
amazing.
my trip.
That's amazing. Oh wow. Okay. So I want to just go a few steps back. So I find that it's so inspiring that you are able to continue doing this, and it seems like you love it in any case. So but just going a few steps back. So you mentioned earlier that just after you were diagnosed, you went through that initial stage, right,
Mm.
of denial maybe and a bit of depression. And I think this is such a common phase for people to go through when they are diagnosed with disease, right? So just tell us a little bit more about that phase. What thoughts were going through your mind when you were first diagnosed?
Right. Yeah. I mean, initially, you don't want anyone else to know. You don't want to be defined by it. You don't want sympathy. You don't want people asking you any questions.
Mm,
And so you start off with saying, I said to my wife, I don't want, she said, well, the family will need to know. So I said, well, the family can know, but they can't be asking me questions because they need to know anything about Parkinson's. You can look it up on the internet.
mm,
I don't really want to have to be explaining anything to them. And I don't want people sort of ringing up just asking how you are and when you're going to get better, because obviously you're not,
mm,
you know. And so that was the first phase, and then the second phase was like, should I tell me running friends and me climbing friends, and you're very reluctant to, because you don't want to be written off, and you don't want to be
mm,
treated differently.
mm,
Um, But then gradually, once I'd kind of come to the conclusion that challenges was what I needed, then I wanted to start, and I got that through mainly through Parkinson's online conferences, and so just generally reading up on material myself, and I realised I needed a challenge. I wanted to fundraise for Parkinson's UK, and then because then I had to start telling people because I needed to raise some money. So the whole thing kind of snowballed, and I ended up raising £1,600 last year through sponsorship from different people, and so the
Fantastic.
choir contributed, the running clubs, my
Yeah.
climbing friends, everybody sort of chipped in. It was really good. And
Yeah.
from there, I guess the local press had picked up on it by then, and so I've become a kind of bit of a media presence, I guess. Not big up too much, but
Yes. So I think that, it's fantastic that you were able to move out of that stage because I think that many people get stuck there, right?
they
Um,
absolutely do. Yes,
mm. So
yeah. I mean, I have. Sorry, I
no,
have
please
quite a
go
few
ahead.
people contact me. Yeah, who are in the early, who've just been diagnosed and want to know what they should do. Should they cancel a holiday? Should they cancel their gym membership and what have you?
Mm,
And I'm trying to advise them absolutely not. Most of them actually don't want to go public yet.
mm, mm,
They actually say, one guy said he's still in work and he doesn't want his boss to know yet. He's
mm,
finding it harder to cope with work.
exactly. Yeah, so what would your tips be to someone who is currently maybe stuck in that phase? Because obviously you got out of it and you were able to move towards a more positive mindset, maybe even a growth mindset, as they call it. So,
Yes.
what would your tips be to someone who's currently stuck in that phase?
Well, first of all, be patient.
Mm,
It does take a long time. Took me a year, and also be sort of be, try and be positive in your thinking, and look for small improvements in certain things, but also to concentrate on the things that give you pleasure and enjoyment. It
mm,
doesn't have to be running or climbing. It can be music. It can be singing. It can be art appreciation. It can be comedy clubs. Going, if you can find comedy films that you enjoy laughing at, that stimulates dopamine in the brain, and so you're looking for small wins to start with.
mm. Yeah, so you don't have to change everything at once. You don't have to immediately do the 100 miler. Small changes could make a big difference. And like you mentioned earlier, I find this so interesting. You mentioned earlier that when you were running, you experienced something called motion freeze, right?
That's right.
Where
Yes.
there was just nothing to focus the mind on. So your feet started to drag and your legs turned into jelly. But then you found that it stopped happening when you sang. So I find this so interesting. Is there anything that you can maybe tell us about the impact of singing and activating your muscles?
Well, I did know that when a lot of my running's done off road, so when I'm running up hills and mountains, I can run fine. Anywhere where I need to concentrate really hard on where my feet plant, so running through the woods and the riverbank near here, I'm absolutely fine. When I go onto smooth tarmac, that's when everything turns to jelly and I lose
Mm,
momentum.
mm,
And what I discovered was that if I do park runs, I need to compete with anybody near to me. People to overtake or stop people going past me. Obviously, within my limits, but it's the competition actually generates something in your brain,
mm,
and so the singing. Partly it's a different section of the brain, I guess, but it just keeps the brain more active. And then, so what I discovered when I was in America, staying with my brother, and he has a swimming pool. I was trying to swim a full length, like I would normally do, and I would get halfway down the length, and my legs would freeze. The arms could keep going because motion freeze tends to be the lower half of your body, but my arms would, so my legs would stop kicking, and I'd start to sink and start to panic, and I thought, right, I've got to be able to cure this one. So I practiced and practiced, and after 3 days, I worked out how to do it. And so I needed to distract my brain or give my brain some extra stimulus, but not too much
Oh,
stimulus.
okay.
And
Yeah.
what I discovered was that so I tried counting and in English, and that got me a bit further, but not far, not to the end of the pool. And in the end, I was counting up to 20 in 3 different languages. So I do French, German, and English,
Oh,
and
wow.
that was just enough. So easy counting, but just enough stimulus to keep me going.
Oh, okay. So it's all about stimulating the brain activity, and
Brain
that you can,
chemistry.
yeah, yes, and that you can actually, yeah, achieve through, yeah, singing and even art appreciation and comedy, as you mentioned earlier, right?
Yes.
All of these things can actually counteract Parkinson's because of the stimulation of the brain activity and the increase of dopamine and adrenaline and all of this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so fascinating to hear about it. And this is such a lovely story, and so much so that it's actually been picked up by the BBC, right? So they made a special film for, is it today's morning live show?
It was, yeah, it was Parkinson's Awareness Day, I think International Parkinson's Awareness Day, and so my wife and I were featured for about 5 minutes, which is quite, in BBC terms, is quite substantial.
Mm.
But it was mainly about the singing and how the singing helped me overcome. And yeah,
Yeah, and you're also part of a choir, right?
yes,
Mm.
yeah.
And
The choirs, I mean, we did a concert last week. We're doing some more concerts this summer, but the, the the concert it's absolutely brilliant. It's a choir without any music, so it's all a cappella.
mm.
And right, so I joined. I came right. I'll tell you the story. I came home from a room one day, and my wife had a friend here, and she said, "How's the running going, Keith?" And I said, "Oh, it's good now. I've discovered singing." She said, "Well, we're always looking for extra men in the choir." And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I
Yeah.
didn't expect to enjoy it, but actually, I absolutely love it.
Oh.
And the thing is, if I'd never got Parkinson's, I wouldn't have had speech, wouldn't have needed speech therapy. Without the speech
Mm.
therapy, I wouldn't have started singing.
Mm.
Without the singing, I wouldn't have joined the choir. And it's given me a completely new area of interest, a new lease of life. And the adrenaline boost from performing is fantastic. But even just singing to yourself, even just in quiet practice, it's really, really good. And I know it's stimulating a different part of the brain, but the 2 hours of quiet practice just goes in a flash. Just
Mm.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
the repertoire we have is really nice.
Yeah. So it sounds like it, it's really been, it's enriched your life to a
It
large
has, yes.
degree. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
So I know that many people have the idea or they believe that Parkinson's is truly just a genetic disease. Right. And therefore, they believe that there's nothing that you can do about it. Do you come across people like this often where people tell you that, there's nothing you can do about it? And how would you typically approach someone like that?
Right. So just give you an example on because I was getting my speech therapy was through Zoom because it was during lockdown. And after a while, after I'd done the initial sort of 5 weeks of intensive, I went on to group Zooms. So you're talking to other people on Zoom, and most people want to talk about the illness. And so one guy said to me, he says, "Keith, what's your worst symptoms? Because there's about 40 different symptoms of Parkinson's. Some people suffer more with some than others." He says, what's your worst symptoms, Keith? What gets you down the most? I said, look, I'm not being funny, but I'm much more interested in the books behind you on your shelf and the hobbies and interests. So, what kind of job did you used to do, and what are those books on your shelf behind you? And he says, well, I'm really keen on miniature painting. Can you do miniature portraits? And I said, oh, well, do you know so and so who's a painter, a famous painter in our town, and 2 or 3 sort of very well-known local painters. We had a conversation then about art, which was much more productive than just complaining about how many times you've fallen over last week or whether your dribbling's got
Yes,
any worse.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. No, so it sounds like you're really focusing on what you can do instead of looking for the reasons why you should, be held back in some or other way,
That's
right?
right,
So
yes.
you're looking for the opportunities, you're looking for the areas of growth. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
right, yes.
So I just want to get back to the training. So obviously this is a big part of your life currently and your exercise regime. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit what your exercise regime currently looks like when you're preparing for the events?
Um, well, I mean, last year when I was preparing for the big walks, as it were, we had I have a regular Tuesday night group I go out with on, and we call ourselves Smelly Helly. Most people in the 70s, and we're nearly all kind of fairly serious ex runners and long distance walkers. And we go out and we meet in the pub car park at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night. We go off in three separate groups: fast, slow, and medium. And you can choose which group to go off with. And then we all meet back in the car park at 2 hours later, and we go have a pint of beer and then we drive home.
Ah,
And about once a month we have an orienteering challenge. So we take it in turns to set the challenge, and you run off with your map and your compass, and you have to find these checkpoints. So that's every Tuesday. That's Tuesday night with that group. Um, Thursday we have a walking group once a month, and then when I'm not on that, I'm in a cycling club. Uh, I do a park run every Saturday morning unless I'm doing a race. Sometimes I do a race on a Sunday as well. Um, and then the rest of the time, I guess. And then last year I had the guy I was going to be doing the 50 miles with. We had a little group on a Wednesday, and we every Wednesday we would increase the mileage. So we start off on sort of 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 miles because I had to build up to being able to do 30 miles, 31 and a half miles, 2 days consecutively,
yes.
the 100K challenge.
Wow.
And then the rest of the time I just walk the dog and play with my granddaughter.
Oh wow. Yo, it's quite an intense week of workouts, right? But it seems to yeah, you're really enjoying it. So it's so lovely to hear that. So just one last question. Did you change anything around your nutrition just out of curiosity?
Yes, just before I was diagnosed, I went on to alcohol-free beer,
Okay.
and uh, and that I lost half a stone.
Oh,
And I don't stick to it regularly, but I find with the Parkinson's because of the connection between your brain and your muscles is weak anyway.
yeah.
The alcohol affects you much more severely than it used to. So I only, if I have more than 2 pints, I'm good for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So basically, if we're going out now, I don't drink alcohol, so I can drive my wife home. So that works well. If I'm in the house, I might have two or three small cans of beer.
Mm.
And I mix it with alcohol free and some with alcohol. So
Lovely.
I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not totally abstaining, but that was a big dietary change.
Yeah, so
And
I mean, it's positive for Parkinson's disease, but also in terms of weight loss. So you lost quite a bit of weight for that as well. So it's
yes,
one small tweak that you made that had such a big impact on your life, hey? Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
still a long way off racing weight.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
I lost about half a stone in something like 6 months when I went on alcohol free beer.
Wow. Lovely. Yeah. Okay, Keith. So, what would be your takeaway for people listening? What do you want to leave our audience with?
Well, just be positive about health. Everyone's got health problems. Everyone you talk to, and lots of people want to moan about whatever it is. Their last visit to the doctors, and actually that doesn't get you anywhere. And it's almost counterproductive. People wallowing in their own kind of problems. And I think you've got to find the things that you like and do more of them, and be
Mm,
positive. and look for the new opportunities all the time.
Mm.
The whole bucket list mentality. Where do you want to go? What do you want to see? And even in virtual reality, I'm waiting for something to. I can visit places in America that I've not been to physically
Mm.
in virtual reality.
Mm.
I'm thinking, well, I'm just waiting for something from South Africa to come up. I'd love to go back onto Table Mountain with a virtual headset on.
Yes, why not?
You know,
Yeah, yeah,
I've
I
got my
love that.
photographs, but I'd like to actually go there and have a good look around and look at the flora and the fauna.
Yeah, you should.
And
Yeah, you should come to South Africa. So many beautiful landscapes. So, yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But it's amazing how the virtual reality can also give us access to these amazing landscapes and even an adrenaline rush here and there. So that's
it
amazing.
is, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, Keith. It's really inspiring to talk to you. And I love how you just refuse to give in. And you showed others that, and still, you're still showing them that there's plenty to live for after Parkinson's,
Right,
after you've been
absolutely, yes,
diagnosed with Parkinson's, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And I think it might be one of the worst things when people lose hope, right? And feel like
Oh,
there's nothing that they can do. But you're showing us that there is life after Parkinson's, even in your 70s.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I go to Parkinson's meetings now to try and gee people up and cheer them up, and I've got some talks lined up with different groups in the autumn, and I've got a slideshow presentation just to say, look, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other things to live your life for and to keep living for.
Yes. And what I love is that by telling your story over the past years, you've not only raised the valuable funds for Parkinson's UK, as you said, but you've also inspired others to live fuller lives, even in the face of adversity. So, yeah, thank you for having the courage to do this. And, yeah, all the best with your next big race or challenge. We'll definitely keep an eye out for you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And just talking to you gives me a buzz. You see, yeah.
Good.
Just just
Lovely.
just be on camera. What an adrenaline rush.
We'll arrange for meetings more often then.
Yeah.
Okay, Keith, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being on the show.
Not at all. My pleasure.